It's an honor that you gave me the time. And like I said, after thinking about it, I rewrote the questions to be less personal and to be more discussing the topic in a detached way, sort of.
Right.
That makes sense.
Right.
So the topic I want to discuss is maybe an unusual one and maybe a very sensitive one about the effects of early life trauma on spiritual practice and the special kinds of obstacles that it creates, because it seems that there is a certain amount of bodily calm that is necessary to allow the mind to settle. And for example, the very first teaching of the Buddha, before the Four Noble Truths, before the Noble Eightfold Path, is the middle way, which is the avoiding of the extremes of sensual indulgence and self-mortification. And he denounced extreme asceticism because the body needs a certain level of comfort in order to allow the mind to settle down. And people with certain anxiety disorders, for example, are at a special disadvantage because anxiety is felt as a powerful feeling in the body and a great distraction. And anxiety is produced by the body in order to warn it against threats of imminent danger or threats to one's existence. I've even heard neuroscientists say that the ego evolved as merely like a danger detection system. Abuse or neglect early in life seem to condense and solidify the ego, which hampers our attempts as spiritual practitioners to see through the ego illusion. Even well into adulthood, such individuals are frequently overwhelmed by the release of stress hormones into the body, which program the ego for hypervigilance to outside threats, even if the original trauma has long been forgotten and is not even conscious. So for such individuals with these challenges, what practical advice can we learn from Bhagavan's teachings to help us overcome distractions to turn within?
Right. We all have certain experiences in the past. And those experiences do to a greater or lesser extent influence us now. But all these experiences are for the person that we seem to be. Bhagavan's teachings are about separating ourselves from this person. So for example, supposing I've undergone trauma in the past, supposing I was abused as a child, it wasn't the case in my case, but well, I went to a boarding school, which wasn't very nice, but apart from that, I can't claim that I had a traumatic childhood like many people have, but just suppose I had. Now, so long as I identify myself as I am Michael, I identify myself with all those past experiences. The whole purpose of Bhagavan's teachings is to question and to dissolve this identification. So what we are investigating is not the person we seem to be, not our mind or our emotions or anything. It is who is it who is experiencing all this? Who is it who had a traumatic childhood? Who is it who bears the scars of that traumatic childhood? In this way, we are separating ourselves from this person whom we now seem to be. I don't know if that helps at all. I don't pretend that's a complete answer, but I think that's it's good to start from that point, from that perspective.
And it is hard because the stronger an emotion is, the stronger the illusion is that that you are that person. The more because it seems if something seems like a threat to your existence, it pulls your attention outwards towards that trigger or towards that feeling.
Yes. I mean, we all come with our own baggage. The baggage we carry in its subtlest form is what are called vasanas. Vasanas means our inclinations. And Bhagavan spoke specifically about Vishaya vasanas. Vishaya vasanas is our inclination to attend to Vishayas. Vishayas means phenomena, anything other than ourselves. So all our memories, all our past experiences, these are all Vishayas. if the Vishayas have a strong hold, or seem to have a strong hold on us, it's because we have a strong inclination to dwell on those things, which in the case of very traumatic experiences is understandable, but the degree of the problem may be different, but the basic problem is the same for everyone. We all have Vishaya vasanas to greater or lesser extent, and the most effective way to weaken and eventually destroy all those Vishaya vasanas is this practice of self-investigation and self-surrender. I'm not pretending it's easy, and I can appreciate that if one has very strong emotional baggage in the form of past traumatic experiences. For example, people who are in the army, or even not necessarily in the army, some circumstance or other, they're involved in warfare. That can be extremely traumatic experience, and it can remain with a person lifelong. Like, many people never recover from these things. So I don't mean to belittle these things, but basically the problem is the same for everyone. Some people may not have so much emotional baggage in that form, but we all have this. We all have Vishaya vasanas to a greater or lesser extent, and Vishaya vasanas we can consider the ego is like the general, and the Vishaya vasanas are its army. So the stronger the Vishaya vasanas are, the more difficult it is. Our aim is to kill the general, because if we kill the general, the army will disperse. They will have nothing to fight for. So, well, actually, in the case of vasanas, they don't exist, because whose vasanas are they? They're ego's vasanas. So our aim is to eradicate ego. But in order to eradicate ego, so long as it's got a strong army around it, we can't get close to it. So part of the process is, or why it is a process, why we are not able to surrender here and now, is because of the strength of our Vishaya vasanas. Vishaya vasanas are likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on, and fears and everything in their seed form. So long as our Vishaya vasanas are strong, we are unwilling to let go. We are unwilling to surrender ourselves. But the more we practice this path taught by Bhagavan, that is to explain it, at each moment we have a fundamental choice. Vasanas are always rising in the form of thoughts. We have a fundamental choice. Either we follow our vasanas wherever they lead us, or we don't yield to those vasanas, but turn our attention within. Every moment we turn our attention within, at least to some extent, we are thereby weakening that Vishaya vasana. The more we yield to the Vishaya vasanas, we're nourishing and sustaining them. So what we are trying to do is to wean our mind off its Vishaya vasanas. I appreciate this must be particularly difficult if one has very strong, very painful memories that have a very deep emotional impact. But there is no shortcut. We all have to work at this. And the baggage we carry is not just baggage from this lifetime. It's from many, according to Bhagavan, our present life is just a dream, but it's one in a long, long series of dreams. The dreamer is ego. So long as the dreamer survives, it will continue dreaming one dream after another. So the vasanas come from they've been with us throughout innumerable lives. And even what we experience in this lifetime is ultimately, it's all, according to Bhagavan, everything is a projection of our own vasanas. Just like in a dream, the whole dream world you see and everything you experience in that dream is a fabrication of your own mind. So it's just your own thoughts you're seeing as the world. Likewise, according to Bhagavan, this present world is just a dream. It's just our own mental fabrication. So the causes, whatever challenges we face, the causes ultimately, though they may seem to be caused by things outside, experiences we've had in the past, actually the root of them lies deep within ourselves. So that is why Bhagavan's path is not about, we try to withdraw ourselves from all concern about anything other than ourselves and focus our attention on ourselves. This is not easy for any of us, but if we want to be free of ego and everything that goes with ego, this is the only way. It does require hard work. That is, at each moment we have to be making that choice, whether to allow ourselves to be carried away or to be swayed by our vasanas, or whether to turn within. That choice we have. If we have, as some people have, very strong emotional baggage that seems to be creating a problem, actually it's our Vishaya vasana that is making us go back to those, or making us respond in certain ways. So the problem lies within us and the solution lies within us. We have to put in as much hard work as it takes if we want to reach our destination. And however strong our vasanas may be, if we got strong vasanas, most of the time we will be carried away by them. But at least little by little, if we try to turn our attention towards ourselves, we are gradually weakening them. Sadhu used to give a very nice analogy. There was a very poor Arab merchant. He made his livelihood by buying goods in the city and carrying them from village to village and selling them. So that was how he made his livelihood. So he had a camel who carried all his merchandise, and they would all day long be walking in the desert. In the daytime, the desert will be very hot, but at nighttime it becomes very cold. So at nighttime, he'll put a peg in the ground, tie his camel to the peg, and he'll put up his little tent and get inside. One night it was particularly cold, and after sleeping for a couple of hours, he woke up to find that the camel had put its nose in the tent. Then he thought to himself, yes, poor creature, it's been carrying all of this burden and walking in the hot sun, so at least let it keep its nose warm. So thinking to himself, he went to sleep again. After some time, when he woke up, he found the whole head of the camel was in the tent. Again, he thought, okay, let it be, let it have its head in the tent. A little later, he woke up and the 4 feet were also in the tent. And by the time he woke up in the morning, the camel had occupied the whole tent and he was outside. Sadhu used to tell this as an analogy. At least little by little, we should allow a little bit of this practice to enter our life, a little bit of self-attentiveness to enter our life. If we allow the nose inside, the whole camel will follow. That is, sooner or later, we'll be pushed out of the picture.
That's what I hope for. Another aspect of this I wanted to ask about is the issue of trust, because it's one thing to be attracted to Bhagavan's teachings or the teachings of Buddha or other jnanis, and but to completely surrender what you believe you are takes an extreme amount of trust. So the kinds of individuals we're talking about frequently develop a deep-seated mistrust that can extend to the whole world and to all people. But Bhagavan's path is one of trust, openness, and surrender. So for an ego that has been programmed to mistrust, what are some practical ways we can learn the trust required for complete and total self-surrender?
The type of people you're talking about, people who've had traumatic childhood, who were abused as children, the reason for their mistrust is because they've been abused, because they've been ill-treated. In other words, they lack love. Trust comes with love. The more you love someone, the more you will trust them. So however much we may have been deprived of love in the past, Bhagavan has now come into our life. And Bhagavan is the very embodiment of love. Bhagavan is, I mean, we can see in his outward life how he was loving to all people, to good people, to bad people, to people of all types. He didn't discriminate between the rich and the poor, the educated and the uneducated, the high caste or the low caste. For him, he treated all equally. Even some of the people who Bhagavan came across in his life were not at all good people. Some were very bad people, but still his love for them was equal because he sees us as himself. He doesn't see us as the person we take ourselves to be. He sees us as we actually are, which is himself. His love not only extended to all people, but I mean, all human people, but also non-human people. In other words, animals, that is, jivas or living beings in other forms. So cows, dogs, monkeys, squirrels, all were attracted to Bhagavan because of his love. And even animals that we would normally consider very dangerous animals, he was equally loving to them. I don't know if you know this story, but once when he was young, he was wandering over the hill around, he was exploring the hill, so we can say. And he, as he often used to do, and he noticed a very large leaf. And he looked up and he saw a big banyan tree higher up the hill. So he was walking up a dry riverbed, and at a certain point he had to climb out of that riverbed, and his thigh brushed against a bush. In that bush there was a hornet's nest. So the hornets were disturbed. They all came out. So he understood immediately that he had disturbed them. So he just stood there and allowed them to sting his thigh. So he got hundreds of hornet stings. And I don't know whether I mean, hornets are very, very, I mean, they're like wasps or bees, but very, very much more venomous and larger. So he allowed them to sting his thigh. He stood there calmly. They stung only that thigh. They didn't sting him because he was standing there calmly. When they were satisfied, he then, by that time, his leg was beginning to swell up. He slowly hobbled back to the cave where he was living at that time. And when devotees saw the swelling in his legs, they applied oil and other things to try and soothe it and to calm down the inflammation. And after a few days, when the inflammation started to subside and the swelling started to subside, they were able to use pliers to remove the stings of a scorpion one by one from his flesh. So he was so compassionate. He allowed, he was willing to undergo that extremely painful experience out of his compassion for those hornets, because he understood they had been disturbed. Let them get the satisfaction of punishing the leg that has disturbed them. So his love and compassion was without limit. So when we understand that we have been fortunate to come to a guru whose love is all encompassing, all embracing, who sees beyond all our shortcomings and just sees us as we really are, as we should see ourselves. And because he sees us as we should see ourselves, his grace makes it possible for us to see ourselves as we actually are.
The story of the hornets reminds me of before, I've heard that everything that is going to happen to us has already been predetermined. So
Yes.
whatever
Yes.
we will do
Yes.
to stop it. So I almost think like the fruits of my bad karmas that are being experienced in this lifetime are like the hornets that I have to endure with equanimity. Is that an appropriate?
No, I think that's very appropriate. That is, and another thing about this, it is true that whatever we experience in this lifetime is the fruits of our past karmas. But just because a person has a bad, it seems to have a bad destiny and has to undergo a lot of hardships in this life, doesn't mean that they're a bad person, because we have had countless past lives, and in those countless past lives, we have been slowly maturing spiritually. We've been undergoing a gradual process of spiritual development. So in the far distant past, we would have been bad people, doing bad things, to harming others and things. So we have, all of us have undoubtedly done so many bad karmas in the past. Which karmas are to bear fruit in each life is selected by God for our own good. So, for example, sometimes we see very bad people. They seem to have a very good destiny. They're born with wealth, and they have all the material things that one could want. They've got wealth, they've got power, they're able to exploit other people. They're able to do all sorts of bad things, but everything seems to be favorable for them. Does that mean they're good people? No, they may have done only a few good karmas. They're now given the fruits of that, but they're misusing that to create more bad karmas. And likewise, we see very great saints who undergo extreme difficulty in their life from beginning to end. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It just so that is, God knows for each one of us which fruits of our past karmas will be most favorable to our spiritual development now. So if we've undergone a traumatic childhood or something, we can't understand why that is, but what we can understand is, though I don't understand how that is beneficial for me. Because nothing, the nature of God and Bhagavan are one and the same. The nature of God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-loving. That which is all-knowing, nothing can happen without its knowledge. That which is all-powerful, nothing can happen without its consent. And that which is all-loving will not allow anything to happen that is not good for all those concerned. So even the unpleasant, traumatic experiences we go through, we are given those experiences for our own good. We may not be able to understand it, but it is for our own good.
That reminds me of another question that many people have had, might have had painful experiences in the past, which of course, as we said, are the fruits of our karmas. That could also lead to a person fearing further bad karmas from the past coming to fruition now, and fearing, further punishment from God. You think of the challenges that maybe the most extreme example would be Jesus, whose destiny was to, be tortured to death. And
yes,
obviously I can't envision accepting that fate for myself, but obviously I don't think that would necessarily be my fate or anything, but a person might reason, if such and such bad karmas have happened to me, what other bad things might be happening in the future. It kind of creates a sense of fear, I guess. Have any disciples of Bhagavan ever expressed any fears like that to him, or concerns? Was that ever an issue that was brought up?
I think sometimes people did express such fears to Bhagavan. Bhagavan, I'm such a terrible sinner. How can I be saved? Bhagavan makes such a reference in the 10th paragraph of Nana, of Who Am I? He says, however great a sinner one may be, if instead of lamenting, oh, I'm such a sinner, how can I be saved? If one should if one clings steadfastly to self-attentiveness, one will certainly be saved. And also in his devotional hymns, in Arunachala Akṣaramaṇamālai, that's 108 verses he sang on Arunachala. In one of the verses, he sings caiyeṉat taḻḷiṛ seyviṉai suḍumalā uyvahai yēdurai Arunachala. That means if you reject me or spurn me, saying chai, that's an expression of disgust. Seyviṉai suḍum, that is the karmas I've done will burn. Oh, seyviṉai means karmas that are done. It can mean karmas done in the past, the present, and the future. They will burn me. What way is there for my salvation? So that feeling that except by the grace of God, except by the grace of God or Guru, whatever we call it, we cannot be saved. That is a very, Bhagavan himself has expressed that. I mean, this is teaching us how we can pray, because so Bhagavan is acknowledging many of us feel like that, but who is it who has done bad karmas in the past, and who is it or even maybe doing bad karmas now, and who is it who is experiencing the fruits of bad karmas? It is only I as ego. So if we investigate, this ego doesn't actually exist. It seems to exist, and it's the root of all our problems. But we seem to be ego only so long as we're looking at other things. That's attending to anything other than ourselves. When we turn our attention back to see ourselves, ego thereby subsides, because there is no such thing as ego. As Bhagavan says, it's a formless phantom. It's got no real existence, but it seems to exist so long as we're not looking at it. If we look at it carefully, there's no such thing to be found. So Bhagavan has taught us this path of self-investigation, and in so many ways, he's assured us, but grace is there, always helping us. Even when we're not helping ourselves, grace is helping us. So we have to trust in that grace, and we have to do our part. When we are turning our attention within, what we're actually doing is we are yielding ourselves to that grace. Because Bhagavan has also said, grace is that which is always shining in our heart as eye. God is never ungracious to us, because he's always shining in our heart as eye. We are ungracious to him because instead of lovingly attending to him, we turn our back on him, so to speak, and attend to everything else.
I've heard it said that one obstacle to, accepting this grace or enjoying this peace is, it seems to be a problem in maybe Western societies, I have heard, is a sense of unworthiness. And there's some anecdotal stories about the Dalai Lama, someone having to explain to him, oh, Westerners, they feel very unworthy of this peace and happiness. And him expressing shock. Do you think that we as ego, as we might develop maybe, self-hatred or a feeling of unworthiness, that is a major obstacle to, softening our hearts and allowing just allowing ourselves to be opened up to the teachings and into this peace of mind, if that makes sense?
Yes, yes. Any identification is an obstacle, because we are neither worthy nor unworthy. If I think I'm unworthy, that is a false identification. If I think I'm worthy, that is an equally false identification. What I am is only I am, nothing other than I am. So that's why Bhagavan said, however great a sinner you may be, instead of lamenting, oh, I'm a sinner, how can I be saved? If you cling to self-attentiveness, you will certainly be saved, because we are not sinners, nor are we saints. We are neither good nor bad. We are just as we are. All this, we become sinners or saints or whatever only when we identify ourselves with this body and think I am Paul or I am Michael. It's the wrong identity. The whole problem ego is nothing but a false identification. So thinking ourselves either worthy or unworthy, both are equally inappropriate. What we are trying to investigate is we shouldn't be starting with any assumptions about ourselves. What we are trying to find out is, who am I? What am I? If we find out what we actually are, we will find that we were never unworthy.
I've had, I know that in past videos, you have explained that on the path, we have all sorts of experiences that ultimately we just need to leave behind. But sometimes I can't still help but wondering what some of these experiences mean as we are on the path. For example, when I am confronted with examples of extreme compassion or extreme loving kindness, you know, I weep, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe this is strange to say, one reason I really trust you and the teachings on your channel is I observe in you similar emotional reactions that I have. For example, whenever you quote the 101st verse of Arunachala Akṣara, I cannot pronounce the name, Akṣaramaṇamālai. I have the same reaction. And I remember the very first time I visited an animal sanctuary, and I was watching people feed these animals that they had nothing to gain from, and these animals were happy, and I felt this emotion welling up, and I kept pushing it down. And then finally I had to go to my car to get something, and then I just started sobbing, and I'm like, why when I'm viewing selfless compassion, why am I crying? And one thought I had is, maybe, you know, the heart is cracking open, and it feels wonderful, but it's painful at the same time.
Yes.
Is that pain the ego dying? Is that, you know, how do you explain that? I don't know who to ask this question to, but it's something I've always wondered.
It is said tears cleanse the heart. That tears means not tears of self-pity, but tears of, for example, sometimes, I mean, I don't often watch films, but very occasionally, if I watch a film, and if it's sometimes there some real life stories, or even if it's fiction, sometimes stories are so touching, the kindness or the love or what people have to undergo. I'm the first one to start weeping watching any film. I mean, nowadays most films aren't worth watching; they're trash. But occasionally, because of someone else, I will watch a film, and some films will really, I can't think of any now, but some films really touch my heart. And I very easily get emotional, because whenever we see examples of kindness or great people who undergo great forbearance, people who undergo very extreme difficulty and come through with a cheerful, smiling face. There's so many, I mean, so many of these human experiences. Even Bhagavan sometimes, sometimes when people came to Bhagavan and they told about the calamities in their life, their bereavement and such things, Bhagavan would often be moved to tears, because Bhagavan himself said, the jnani is just like a mirror. So whatever comes before him, he reflects that. So it is natural for us to be moved by so long as we take this body as I, this world seems to be real. And kindness, forbearance, compassion, love, courage, all these things naturally move us emotionally. If we've got unless we've got a very hard heart. I don't understand people who don't get emotionally moved.
Actually, I wondered about Arunachala Akṣaramaṇamālai.
Yes.
Did Bhagavan compose the music as well as the words? Did he compose the melody, or is the melody tradition?
Well, it can be sung in different ways. Different people sing on different melodies. I don't think Bhagavan ever set it to music. But one thing, when Bhagavan was composing it, tears were pouring down out of his eyes as he was composing it. So the paper he was writing on was becoming wet with his tears.
There's various versions on YouTube that I play, and it has that effect on me. It's supernatural. It's
yes.
not like anything.
But Bhagavan's words, even if we don't understand them, Bhagavan himself once said, someone said, Bhagavan, I'm not able to understand these words. Bhagavan said, even if you don't understand, listening to them or reciting them will have its own effect.
I'm sorry, as we're talking, the questions kind of sometimes just dissolve as I'm, which I guess is part of the point, you know.
Yeah.
I guess
finally the questioner also has to dissolve. That's our aim.
Sometimes I wonder when we talk about life being a dream, I wonder if each dream could be completely made from scratch. Like after this dream ends, would the next dream have a whole new planet with a whole new history, a whole new religious systems? I don't know if that's ever been addressed. Maybe that's not even relevant. It's probably.
I think it's not really relevant. It doesn't matter. It's a dream. So in a dream, anything is possible. So, but because every dream is basically a projection of the same vasanas, we can assume it will be, in many respects, very similar to this dream.
On the subject of compassion, I don't know if this is a topic that comes up. I guess I've heard it discussed where sometimes to feel compassion feels very painful because you're weeping or feeling pain with who you are seeing, and the mind wants to go in the opposite direction of callousness and apathy. And it seems like the challenge is to find a way to avoid the extremes of saying, well, this is just a dream and these people have bad karma and I'm not going to think about them. And that's not the right attitude. And there's also being too involved and being overly sensitive and feeling too much of the pain of the world. So it's challenging to get rid of those two extremes and to follow.
Yes. Well, I think it is good to feel compassion, to feel pain when we see the injustices in this world, when we see in how many ways people, not only people, animals and other creatures, in how many ways there is suffering in this world. It is good for us to be moved by that. But in a dream, if you see suffering, supposing in a dream you see a war or a famine or a terrible pandemic or anything like that, you see so much suffering. What is the greatest good you can do to alleviate all the suffering you see?
Is to wake up.
Yeah. Likewise, we should apply discrimination. Yes, when we see we see so many types of injustices and cruelties and so on in this world. Even if we want to, there's very little we can do to alleviate these things. So, so if we are practical, the best thing we can do is to turn our attention within. We're not being hard-hearted. It's not that we don't care, but we recognize our powerlessness. Things are happening as they're meant to happen. That doesn't mean we shouldn't help when there's opportunity to help, but we shouldn't be going out of our way to help. If we have food and we see a hungry person, we should naturally give our food to that hungry person, but we don't have to be going out looking for hungry people to feed, because there's no end to it. And another problem is, we know with the nature of the world, even if you're able to solve some problem in the world, for every problem that is solved, another problem pops up in some other form.
And those problems.
Yes. It's the nature of embodied existence.
One thing too is that, like on the subject of early life trauma, you mentioned powerlessness. that's kind of a thing that also solidifies and condenses the ego to make it more vigilant, less likely to turn within. Is it wants some sort of sense of power, but the ego knows deep down it is powerless. And it seems like the one power the ego has is to refuse to let go, refuse to open its heart, refuse to turn within, and to, even though it's a useless power and a pointless power, it's the last thread of power that the ego wants to hold on to, and it doesn't want to let go because I guess it doesn't want to be annihilated.
Yes.
I suppose.
It's not the only power. If ego has the power to hold on, it also has the power to let go. So if we want to be in control, we should let go.
Exactly.
So long as we think we are in control, we are deluding ourselves, and we become a slave to our vasanas, our desires, our likes, our dislikes, our attachments, our fears, and everything. The freedom can be found only in letting go.
I have not read Paradise Lost, but at one quote I remember hearing from it is Satan says he would rather rule in hell than serve in heaven, and that seems to be exactly what we as ego are doing.
We are doing exactly, yes.
Well, thank you so much. I know it's been 45 minutes. I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
And you can cut this out of the video, but I just wanted to share just one small incident. On July 15th, 2019, I was watching a video of yours. You were speaking to the group in Houston, and you were explaining to them that when you bring a word to mind, when you say a word, it can bring that idea to mind. Yes. And you said to them, oh, for example, and you were thinking, for some reason, the word apple tree came out of my mouth. I said it out loud as I was watching the video on my phone. And you were thinking, and you said, oh, like apple or tree. And suddenly I just had this feeling that this is a dream, and it's not just, it's very intimately a dream. Like, yes, this is all Bhagavan. This is all him.
Yes.
It was I did not even believe in God for most of my life. And and that day happened to be the feast day of Saint Bonaventure, which I looked up later. And Saint Bonaventure wrote this beautiful piece of work called The Mind's Road to God, which is practically self-inquiry. He talks about finding God within and stealing the mind and the utter simplicity and unity of God, which just leads me to believe that everything points to the simplest truth that isn't beyond description. So thank you for your work, and thanks to Bhagavan too.
All thanks to Bhagavan, yes. Because really, I'm nothing. I mean, whatever I say is, if there's anything useful in what I say, it comes from Bhagavan. If there's anything useless, it comes from me.
Oh, thank you so much again, and I will probably write more, I'm sure, if it's okay. But
yes. Well, I hope it's of some help what I said today.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I mean, that again, it is Bhagavan's doing, but that's why, as I said, when you wrote to me, I said, I don't know whether I have anything useful to say on this topic, but if we talk about it, maybe Bhagavan will give the right words. So, it's all his doing.
Thank you very much.
But if ever you want to talk again, well, I can't say I'm always available because I have so many demands on my time, but I'm always ready to make myself available.
That's very much appreciated.
Right.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Okay, right.